We're not winning right now. He won by 2.3 million votes. We lost the House and the Senate. And we're in a panic. I get it, for good reason. Yes. This guy's not screwing around.
Right.
But we need to own our mistakes, and we need to own what's wrong with our party.
So you were here last time. We talked about regulations. You said, oh, it's a completely new day.
Well, no, wait.
That's a quote from you. Completely new day.
Well, I mean,
you said you were working on it.
By the way, and last week you had Ezra Klein on, which was incredibly important. He wrote a book called Abundance, which really lays out a very condemning picture of liberal governance in this country, and the fact that we are process-focused and not outcome-focused. And you're a demonstrable example of that as relates to what you've tried to do with your damn roof for the last 15 years. And so it's our job to eliminate as many of those thickets
How's that going, though?
as possible. Let's make it. No, sincere. Well, I'll tell you this. When we have on a serious note, when you have an emergency mindset, it goes extraordinarily well. I'll give you two examples. You had Josh Shapiro on recently talking about the I-95. We had the I-10 here, which we were able to get back on track and cars back on that I-10 within 8 days.
After a fire.
After the fire, but we were able to do it in 8 days. And that otherwise would not have occurred. It would have been months and months and months of process in a traditional environment. The same thing with the recovery as it relates to debris removal. Again, because we have emergency mindset. The question is, how do you apply that in between emergencies? How do you do that as it relates to a standard of governance that people should expect and taxpayers should expect? So I couldn't agree more with Ezra. It's an indictment of liberal governance and leadership. And he attacks California rightfully in many categories and respects, the high-speed rail, as it relates to housing production, and we own that. But we also own the response. 42 secret reform bills I passed. There's 20 bills we're working on right now. We're trying to address the issue that is the issue that dominates, and that's localism. And the issue you describe is local inspectors that the state can't control, but we have to enforce.
I wrote down that list of the people, and regulators, administrators, inspectors, contract reviewers, these are all the people involved.
Amen.
Project managers, fee assessors, special commissioners, zoning officers, consultants, contractors, lawyers, lobbyists, sometimes unions also. Can't you take a chainsaw? Can't we DOGE the shit out of these people?
Yeah, I get it. Look, yes, I mean, the lawyers and the lobbyists, those are the two most potent forces in that respect. The Central Valley in California is one of the fastest growing parts of the state. It's predominantly rural, yes. It's predominantly Republican, yes. But it's an incredibly important part of the state. And I think we, at our own peril, we talk down to people in the Central Valley. And I think a lot of people extend that as part of the problem with the Democratic brand. We talk down to people, we talk past people. But as it relates to getting housing done and dealing with the supply-demand imbalance, to deal with the affordability crisis, that explains more things in more ways on more days about California's challenges, 100% we have to have that same mindset. And we're moving in that direction very aggressively. We own it. We have a responsibility to do something about it. But remember, it's interesting. Those rules were established in the 1970s by Republicans. The California, the CEQA challenges that we have in the state, that was Ronald Reagan bill. 1970, NEPA, that was Nixon. Clean Air Act, Nixon. Endangered Species Act, interestingly, Nixon. But it's been weaponized. This lawfare has been weaponized, and Democrats, we need to call that out.
So John Fetterman was in the news today. He said, if you're talking about the Democratic Party, he said, if we don't get our shit together, we're going to be a permanent minority.
I agree.
And I see you're doing something about it. I applaud it. I think it's great. You've got this podcast. You're talking to people. You know, it's amazing to me that even that is controversial to some people. They call it platforming. If you talk to someone you don't agree with.
Yeah.
I feel like this country is divided into owners and healers. People think you can own the other side. Yeah, well, Gavin Newsom owned DeSantis. Yeah. DeSantis destroyed Gavin Newsom. Yeah. Or people who want to talk and heal. And I feel like the next president's going to be, at least if it comes from this party, the Democratic Party, someone who wants to talk and heal. And I feel like we're doing that.
It's really been interesting. I mean, we had some controversial figures on, I'll acknowledge that, and Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and some others. But you're right. I mean, this idea that we can't even have a conversation with the other side.
You have to. They won.
Thank you. That's it, bottom line. Or the notion we just have to continue to talk to ourselves, or we're in the same damn echo chamber. These guys are crushing us. The Democratic brand is toxic right now. We had a high water mark 2 weeks ago, and that was a CNN poll at 29% favorability. It's dropped in the NBC poll down to 27%. it's one thing to make noise, but you also have to make sense. And I think with this podcast and having the opportunity to dialogue with people I disagree with, it's an opportunity to try to find common ground and not take cheap shots. I'm not looking to put a spoke in the wheel of their, or at least a crowbar in the spokes of their wheel to trip them up, to your point. And I think it's important. Democrats, we tend to be a little more judgmental than we should be. This notion of cancel culture, you've been living it. You've been on the receiving end of it for years and years and years. That's real. And Democrats need to own up to that. They've got to mature about this.
So what do you say to people who say, well, this sounds all very good, but Governor, you were the poster boy for a lot of this stuff. I see today the Trump administration they talked about, I don't know if this is true, but they talked about the fact that California had a rule that schools cannot be required to notify parents if their kids in school have changed their gender, their pronouns. That's the kind of thing, even though it doesn't affect a lot of people, that makes a lot of people go, well, you know what? That's the party without common sense. Now, if that's your state, how are you?
Well, I just disagree with that. I mean, the law was you would be fired. A teacher would be fired if a teacher did not report or snitch on a kid talking about their gender identity. I just think that was wrong. I think teachers should teach. I don't think they should be required to turn in kids. If Johnny's talking about some identity issue or some issue about liking someone of the same sex, is the teacher's job to then report that? By the way, in this law, the teacher can still do that, but they can't be fired if that's what, it can't be fired if that's not what they do.
I've seen a lot of people lately talking about this 80-20 issue, and I think you are on the other side of this now, the side with the 80. 80 being 80% of the people in this country. Again, this is the issue of should biologically born men be able to compete in women's sports?
That's tough.
And, you know, I saw the polling here in California. They think you're a traitor for saying this.
Yeah.
You know, when those kind of people call you a traitor, there's a word for that, electable. If the Democrats... And 80% of the people are with you on this now. If the Democrats can't get with 80, how are they going to do something when it's a 51-49?
No, look, I get it. And that's, look, and the other side weaponizes these issues. They dehumanize, they attack, they demean, and they've weaponized this issue extraordinarily well. That said, on the fundamental question, is it fair? And I can give you example after example. Just in my home state, there was someone that won a triple jump by 8 feet. Right. All right. It's just, but it's, you know, serious. And we had two extraordinary athletes that got into the state finals, trans athletes, got in the state finals. The backlash was so bad, they didn't even compete. And the other two people that were kicked out weren't able to compete. It was fundamentally unfair. We haven't been able to figure that out. So I express that as a fierce champion of LGBTQ rights, and have with a record that I don't have to put up with anyone.
You have the cred.
And so that's the challenge we have. You want to cancel someone who's been with you on almost, you know, every critical issue at every critical juncture, decades, or cancel you because you have the audacity to go visit with Trump next week. I mean, you have more credibility to visit him than any goddamn person.
I think so.
I know. You've been at this for 20 years.
By the way, I give him a lot of credit for inviting me.
Yeah, by the way, and learn something from that, Democrats.
Yeah.
I'm serious about this. It's not zero sum. We're not winning right now.